It's time to leave your cinematic troubles behind. Let the takes flow through you. And let the noise from the zeitgeist subside. Welcome to Cast Against Time.
Welcome
Oh, I did not expect that effect.
to Cast Against Time. I'm your host, Colin J.
Okay.
Dyson, and with me is also host Matthias Steven Frankels.
Hello. I was going to say children, but that sounded creepy.
We've already, if people aren't creeped out by this, it's probably because they're of a similar demo.
Demo.
Yeah.
Yes. Demographic.
That's right.
For you olds.
Why use additional syllables if you
You
don't
save
have
so
to?
much time.
Exactly. Tacos? Fuck that. Talks. Margaritas? Margs.
We go through this
Every time.
every 6 months.
Every time we have Mexican food.
I don't mind the abbreviation, but you can't abbreviate talk.
Sure you can.
You don't. Why? You don't need to.
It's all about context. You save one syllable. If you add all those syllables up by the end of your lifetime, you've saved like 30 minutes.
What are you gonna do with that time?
I don't know. Shit myself? Whatever I'm doing with the end of my horrible existence.
I think you're okay to abbreviate burrito to burrito. I get that one because burrito is a long word.
Why? It's just one syllable.
But it's a longer word. Taco is already short.
But you're saving the same amount of syllables per word.
But burrito is a longer word.
Doesn't matter. You're only saving the same amount of time per abbreviation. That's all I'm saying. I want my notch. I want my tox. I want my margs.
I can even get by with notch.
Now, I'll say marg is the most acceptable one, right? Because you're saving at least 3 syllables there.
Well, it's like people who say Marge versus Marjorie.
Do you know?
My grandma.
Yeah, my grandma.
Really?
as well. Yeah, she was a Marjorie. She did. She's spinning in the salads of time. Wow, it's true.
We just went right to the depths.
Matthew! I have a very, on a Touched by an Angel special edition follow-up to a very important Cast Against Type development.
Ooh.
We need to check back in with our old friend, the Liver King.
Oh, I've been kind of saving this stuff.
Well, you've seen him now, and now that you've noticed him once, he's come to prominence in your everyday.
He's come to prominence, but Twitter is doing this thing, and I apologize if I'm cutting you off from this, but Twitter,
maybe
Twitter's doing this thing where they're discrediting him.
Okay, so exactly, this is where I'm going with this. So this is very important because the Liver King is so seminal to our pod, and I just hate to see a colleague taken down a peg so much.
Is it slander or it's libel or slander? It's slander. No, libel's written, right?
Well, this is libel because
so it'd be libel, not slander.
So, I just want to start with a post from our good friend Liver King, and where he says,
"Okay,
well, let's just listen to some of what he has to say." Liver, do you go by
do you go by liver or is it King?
Can I call you Liver?
Look at this. I got a half pound of tofu. Only 29 ingredients, none of which are found in nature.
He's eating a cube of tofu.
Did you just say there's no ingredients of tofu that's found in nature?
Which is
And
pretty
then I
much
got
all
my
it is.
tempeh. All the soy to express my highest and most estrogenic form.
Okay.
No.
So,
okay.
So he's.
We might have to cut ties with old LK.
Well, no. That's this. Look, he's hit upon a deep truth. Estrogen is evil. If you know anybody that has estrogen coursing through their body, you should stop talking to them.
Tofu, which is made of plant-based stuff, is not derived from plants.
Tofu will turn your wiener inwards. Is
that what it does?
Well, that's what he's suggesting. But here's the thing. Virtually everything that Elmo does on his stupid fucking experiment that he now calls...
I thought you were actually talking about Elmo. I thought you were going to go on a diatribe about the puppet.
No, everything that fucking Cybertruck driving, slave driving ghoul does is just a failure. It's an abysmal thing to listen to watch, to participate in. That being said, there's one change they made. Maybe it wasn't even a change that he made. Maybe it's just a change that was already, slated to unveil itself for Twitter. It's not called X. Fuck you. You're an idiot if you call it X. Even though that's what it is. I guess I'm living in the past. What does that say about me?
I think everyone's living in the past.
Whatever. Okay. So maybe you're not an idiot. Maybe I was coming in too hot. Anyway, one of the things that they did unveil, is kind of like a community policing.
It's
policy.
like the Wikipedia of policing.
Sure, it's like a reader's added context,
it's great. It's great, like people watching or like audience watching.
Well, so and unfortunately for my good friend Liver, they've been adding context, and in this case, so they say about that particular one, what brought Liver King his ripped appearance and quote close to nature body were IGF-1 hormones and up to 120 milligrams of testosterone per week, costing close to $11,000 per month. So it's a bad look for old Liv. But you know what?
How do they know that, though? I would imagine he hasn't posted about this.
They actually supply sources at the bottom of
I was looking up his real name.
Is it Larry the Liver? Larry Liver guy? Lawrence Larry Liver?
Starts with a B.
Bucho?
Brian Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Brian posted another video. Let's just listen to a little bit of that one.
The Wikipedia page doesn't know his age. It says 46 to 47.
That guy's got a Wikipedia, though. You know what I mean? That's just okay.
I mean, 5.7 million people like or follow him. So
okay, well, so he's got another video. It says the kale doesn't fall far from the cow. Let's see what he has to say a little bit. So he's firing firecrackers at like a protege of some kind.
The barbarian is a modern-day rite of passage into manhood to test his physical, social, emotional, his intellectual, his spiritual.
This guy's like chasing chickens around, throwing spears and stuff.
He on the other side of the bar.
She shows up at the bottom of the barrel.
Okay, so he's clearly got some kind of like man's camp or something. But again, Twitter has provided context for us. Liver King was exposed for spending as much as $11,000 a month on steroids. Despite a prior apology and vow to go natural, he has since begun using steroids again.
What are you doing, Liver?
His muscles are not from a raw meat diet, which can also make you very ill. And I think that's bullshit. I think you should eat all the raw eggs and raw poultry you want and just see what happens. If you're the kind of person that goes in for this stuff, I think you should do it. And you should go hard. Just like his friend Tanner here or whatever.
Did you ever watch Big Mouth?
No, but I know of it.
There's a running joke where like the kids want to be really tough or like make themselves feel tough, and they call themselves big dick boys.
Okay.
And so whenever me and my wife, which old Sasha, what's going on with you? But whenever we see like a big truck or like old Liver here, we yell out big dick boy.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, anytime you hear one of those big fucking honking choppers that's just like a big slap you in the face engine, just like they just go screaming down the street. Yeah, I do something similar with my wife. I'll go, my dad!
There was a biker gang that passed me on the 405, and I just went down this rabbit hole and they were all clearly like in their 50s and 60s. And I went down a rabbit hole of how the gang gets formed. Do they have meetings? What the minutes of these meetings are. And if these people have families and what their families think of it. Like I just went down this whole rabbit hole about like older middle-aged biker.
Midlife crisis.
Do you think they have meetings? You think somebody is a secretary and takes minutes?
Not for your like a real biker bar that stabs people and does PCP in fucking gas station bathrooms. But like
they have to congregate in some way and like coordinate what they're gonna do.
I think they just meet at a bar and get into fights, and like that's like the real biker gangs though. Like most of these guys are just fucking weekend warriors that are just getting away from their accounts receivable job.
Do you think they had to go on Yelp and find a good tailor for their jackets?
No, I think they just go to like the nearest leather shop, not realizing that it's also like secretly a bondage shop. And if they ever found that out, they'd be like, "Fuck this." Anyway, I have another piece of media up front. I usually don't like to front load our program.
Front me
with media, but. Well, because one thing that I was thinking about, Dune 2 Chicks came out not my thing, another podcast thing, came out a few weeks ago now, and we never talked about it, and we never will because it's far too
sucked.
It's so far gone in the past. You will not trigger me. I will not rise to this bait. I will not take this bait. No, but Yeah, so Austin Butler was kind of doing the presses and stuff, and I know that is a natural response. But you know what? Here's the thing: I'm with you with that response. I understand it. I can't say there's anything I've seen him in that I'm in love with the man. But
Elvis. Did you see Elvis?
Yeah, I saw Elvis.
Okay, we don't have to go down that. Sorry,
we don't know. And I also know the lasting impact that it did to his brain. But I guess what I want to say is I'm not ready to throw him out yet. You know what I mean? Because I feel like he's untapped.
You've kept. There's a sports term of like, I've bought a house on his island. So you're still like one of the last people on Austin Butler Island.
But I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say I endorse. He's not a value add.
You believe in him.
I believe in his potential. To use another sports analogy, send him down to the minors for a little while. Let him toil there. Let him prove that he can hit 400 against the youngins. And
Wasn't that what Master of the Air was supposed to be? Like a
Yeah, but you know what? That was just kind of botched in its execution, and I don't blame him for that. In fact, he was actually relatively charismatic in that. I mean, actually, and that was a real slow burn of a series. It came around, and it ended up being worth a watch-ish, I guess. I mean, it's lesser material in terms of that whole thing, that franchise. Are we calling the Band of Brothers franchise a franchise? Whatever.
I would say yes more than no.
That's a further discussion. That's a discussion for a different time. But I saw this thing talking about old Aussie butts, and hang on.
Aussie butts.
I'm just willing to give him a little bit of leash. Then I saw this thing, and it immediately made me want to buy a little bit more celebrity stock in old Aussie butts. And I think that you'll
my favorite movie.
So by the way, so this is
I have seen this.
This is him, and he's like, he was asked the question about like his favorite movie on the red carpet. All right, so this is his response. But then somebody's going to come in and give us a little counter.
My favorite movie as a kid. I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Okay. All right, as a kid.
So he says, "Good, the Bad, and the Ugly." That was my favorite movie as a kid. Then we cut to this guy who's got easily the rapiest mustache I've seen on somebody this age.
It's pretty like it's a fine-haired predatorial mustache.
But this is also TikTok, and the first shot is him. He's giving a look like what? Then the next shot is him with head and hands, and we'll post this for the viewers. You're not viewers. And then finally, this is what he has to say.
Just say Toy Story or something. It's okay.
Just say Toy Story, because that's what I liked as a kid. So, Austin, you must have liked Toy Story as a kid, too. Well, that must have been the only shit that you ever watched.
Well, I think, so I have seen this, and people were commenting that they think Austin Butler is pretentious because he picked an art house film.
That's not an art house film!
Exactly, that's not an art house film.
Listen,
that's not something that's...
Youngins, I don't want to come down on you. I'm too hard on the youth, okay?
Come down on them.
No.
Come down on them hard.
I want to welcome them into our fold.
Don't go into his fold, please.
Come into my fold.
Don't fold them.
I'm going to fold you. Let me explain. I struggled with this once. Sometimes you hear the title of a thing you've never heard of before. And you go, well, because I've never heard of it, it must be some art house bullshit, right? And I get it. You know, because clearly everything that you know must have come from Mr. Beast, right?
They were going to say Mr. Bean.
So, yeah,
Mr. Bean or Mr. Beast.
And, same difference. I understand. But understand that there was a world of art and culture before you and before the shit that you're into. And also, by the way, sometimes, depending on how engaged your parents are with you, and I understand, most of your folks don't want to have anything to do with you. I wouldn't want to, okay? If you were mine, not you, listener, but, the proverbial you, the royal you. Look, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is perhaps the most popular Western film of all time. I understand that Connor here, he's challenged because here's this actor, he's giving this answer in kind of like a cool guy, like Johnny Depp.
Yeah, the whispering is kind of, it's like not great.
Hey, everything I have to say is real important, and I still can't shake this Elvis thing I've been writing for 3 years, even though it's been 3 years.
This sounds like his inner thoughts, actually.
Listen, Austin, when you get out there, you just gotta go tell them. And if they ask you for an art house pick, what your favorite movie is? Tell them the most obscure shit you could think about, not something that literally a billion dads have showed their children for generations. I mean, what the fuck?
I mean, yeah, that's how I watched it. It was on AMC one night, and me and my dad watched it.
And you know what, kids? That just means that Austin's dad was involved, all right? And don't be jealous of that. Look, we should all be so lucky, all right? But Austin's dad, and look, hey, consider yourself lucky. You weren't made to struggle through 3 hours of a film. I know. It's really tough. I don't know how you did it for Oppenheimer, but you got through. And Austin did the same thing.
They watched the recap on Instagram.
Okay, fair enough. But however you made it through, Austin also made it through in the same way. And you know what? This is an olive branch that can connect you to old Aussie butts. Okay?
I will say there was a clip. There was a press clip with Variety, I think it was the Oppenheimer cast, and they asked Florence Pugh what her brunch menu item would be. And she started out real slow, like, oh, I don't know. And then she started listing out all these items.
Was it super obscure shit? That
No. It was like everything in the English breakfast.
Oh, okay.
And then, but the funny thing was, you see Austin Butler in the back, just kind of like in shock that she's eating all of this. And it made me like him more because he was just like, I don't know what to do with this information. And he seemed normal.
See, I thought you were going to say she's like, I need like a saffron infused pancake with a demi-glace.
No, she said like a biscuit, and then she's like,
okay,
and
good.
beans and potatoes and bacon and just kept going on, and his mind was being blown in the background.
Oh, you know what? That makes me like her even more. But this is not a food show. What show?
What non-food show is this?
You might ask. This is Cast Against Type, a show where we attempt to restore some sanity to the discourse as it pertains to the world of cinema. And we do that in one of three ways. One, by addressing the cinematic conundrums submitted by you, the listener. Two, by unpacking the ideas and assertions we stumble across out there in the media, be it social or otherwise. And three, by occasionally subjecting ourselves to mysterious media oddities.
Nice.
And we're going to do that today. Again, and again, and again.
Until we're dead.
And again, and again, and again. What are you drinking over there, Mr. Frank?
A Gimlet.
A Gimlet.
Made by you.
Wow. And we had to drink it up because somebody's ice game is not up to par.
I have ice. It's filtered water. I don't have a car battery here making ice.
So, the first one is a submission from a listener named Robert C.
Robert Carlisle?
I'd love to believe. No, I can see his full name on his email, and I'm not going to expose poor Robert to the throngs of listeners that we have.
We'll just say it's RC, Robert Carlisle. Or Bobby, or it could be Bobby, was it Carnival?
This is a world I'd love to live in, so I'm happy to go along with your delusion. And this is what Robert Carlisle has to say. Old Bobby Cars. Hey, guys.
Why is that his voice?
I don't know. That's not nice. He took the time to submit this. I don't know why I felt like I had to color it. Hey, guys. Hey, guys. I was listening to a different film podcast, which I know is impossible because you guys are the only one. Yes,
damn right.
Thank you.
Very right. Very true.
Yes. And we can explain this as much as possible. And you know, it astounds me because, again, I don't know any other, particularly white men especially, that have done a film pod. So, again, you guys are welcome. Jesus fucking Christ. I was listening to a different film podcast, which I know is impossible because you guys are the only one. And I heard somebody make an interesting declaration. Oh, let us know what that is, Robert Carlisle. The guest said something like, while there have been many British filmmakers and many British films, England itself never really had a film culture in the same sense that other countries do. Now, as a person with some English ancestry myself, I was a bit surprised by this. He then went on to list a bunch of countries with more solid film cultures: France, Italy, Japan, China, India, Korea, etc. My question is twofold. Do you agree with the statement, quote, England never really had a film culture, unquote, and whether you do or not, does it have a well-developed one now? Thanks, Robert from Los Angeles. Bobby Carr could be closer than we think. You just pointed to your dog.
She perked up.
Oh, it's. I thought that you were going to rename her
Robert Carlyle.
Robert Carlyle. So,
how do you want to attack this?
This is a big subject, and we could really get lost in the weeds of it. And there is a simple answer and a complicated answer.
Do we want to give our simple answer first and then get into the complicated?
The opinions of the Cast Against Type podcast are ours and ours alone, and do not reflect the opinions of our guests.
Should we do it on a count of 3?
Sure. Okay. So let's address the first question with a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the statement England never really had a film culture? Now we'll do it on 3.
So if we say yes, we agree that there wasn't one.
Correct.
Okay.
Whatever we answer here, just understand that we're just reducing this to ratios. Okay.
So why don't we just say, was there a film culture in England?
Let me ask you, Matt. Was there ever I don't like the way we're gonna do it. It's too Russian roulette. Let's just do it. Let's cross-examine.
Okay.
I'll ask you, and then you ask me.
Okay.
Matt, do you agree with the statement England never really had a film culture?
Yes.
Okay. Now you ask me.
Do you agree with the statement? Do you agree with the statement that there was no film culture in England?
Yes. Okay. Now that we've said it, I don't agree with what I've just said. Okay?
Wow.
Before people get on their high horse, but the problem is, if it's a yes or no question, you have to answer in a series of ratios. So it's like, if there can only be a yes or no, and it's 51% versus 49%, I have to go with 51%. This is a very, what's the name of the thing that broccoli-haired dude from FTX got arrested for? What was he into? Oh, effective altruism. That was a very effective altruism way of looking at the world. I don't actually believe the world that works that way. You can have 40% of a film culture and still a film culture. So I do think that England has a film culture, but you really, really, really have to look for it.
Jinx.
And that is, well, oh shit, you drank first. I owe you a Coke. Kane. Maybe that's where we should start, is how hard do you have to look?
Well, yeah. So you're arguing that there is a film culture, you just have to really look hard. So let's hone in on what that film culture is.
The thing is with British film, and we're going to briefly go into a little bit of history, but not enough to bore the youngins. Don't worry, you're not going to learn anything.
We won't bore you.
You're not going to learn
anything.
And you know that you're not. We're holding cocktails. You aren't going to learn from the jump. The thing is, there is a little history here, and you do have to go down that road a little bit, but you don't have to go too far down it to understand that, yeah, there is a film culture. It's just not recognizable compared to the rest of that list. So that's why the yes answer comes so easily, because, look, France, Italy, Japan, China, India, Korea, those are all countries that have film cultures that are so well established that you don't have to really scrape the barrel to find examples. And we'll take it literally. While there have been many British filmmakers and many British films, England itself never really had a film culture. So he's talking past tense. So he actually does interchange British and English in his own question. And this is not me picking on you, Robert. This is just, the thing is, there is a distinction to be made there. And it's an important one. If you talk about England, you're talking about one territory.
Yeah.
And England's own personal cinematic history will be diminished if we also don't consider some other contributions, particularly from places like Ireland and Scotland. You'd be surprised. Scotland factors into their history way more than you would think even early on. We're going to go from movies after the invention of sound. One of the first important things that England ever did, although this is where that distinction comes in, because it's actually a Scottish guy. It's a guy named John Grierson. And he was very important because he was a fixture in making documentary filmmaking what it is today. And I guess I would say more broadly, England has a very interesting tradition of movies that reflect class and reflect their history, their common history. And the problem with talking about English movies is that that country is uniquely bogged down by the wars that they were dragged into or helped start, however you see it. Their access to technology was behind everyone else. They didn't get access to sound, or at least the big studios that were doing vertically integrated shit. didn't have access to the same tools as the big Hollywood companies did. And so they were always behind the curve. And so it's not to blame England that they didn't have an initial early rich history as it pertains to cinema. But for some reason, other countries were able to get around this hurdle. We're just looking at the Brits today. And I promise you, I'm not going to foist any horrible accents on you like I have in the past.
Well, it's early.
You're right.
It's early and it's the first drink.
I haven't finished this drink yet, so we'll see where it goes. And I guess where I would get us back on track to a place where we can all finally start to go, oh, okay, there's a thing that I recognize is Alfred Hitchcock.
I was going to say the 60s.
Well, the
late
60s.
50s.
No.
Well, Hitchcock was the 40s.
So Hitchcock, the thing is, look, during World War II, their films were not disseminated amongst the Euros or amongst the rest of Europe the way that, say, the French films were, even amongst the fucking Nazis. And you know what?
Don't say it.
Those guys are bad news.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that. So their stuff wasn't being disseminated. They didn't have the same access. And Hollywood was always a step ahead. It was able to integrate some of their actors and actresses in ways that kind of stole the limelight from the limeys. It's just, yeah.
There it is.
Well, it's just where it starts. Where you really start to kind of recognize their contributions are with Hitchcock. Now, the problem is Hitchcock made a bunch of movies for the Brits in the 30s. They just didn't have a culture of preserving these things, valuing these things, and a lot of those movies got lost to time for decades. And when he finally leaves England, he goes to America, and he kind of disavows his English film education. The only movie that anyone can see of his is a movie called The Lodger. And he even does this interview with this, and this is where a lot of this comes from, and where a lot of British film history gets buried. There is a class of French filmmakers. There was a bit of snootiness coming from them early on, and there's a very famous book that's never gone out of print called... Well, it was basically a series. I actually don't know what it's called. It's a series of interviews between Francois Truffaut.
Isn't it just Truffaut and Hitchcock?
I think that might be the name of the book. Yeah, and it's a series. It's an interview between them essentially. It's just that transcribed, and they go on to disavow. I think that Truffaut says something like, there's never been a talented British filmmaker, and Hitchcock's primed to agree with them because Hitchcock wants to be seen as like the exception to the rule. Whereas there were actually talented people on the ground. Do you know anything about any of those early filmmaking guys?
Around Hitchcock's time?
So like around the 40s, 50s, because you brought up the swinging 60s, and you might be primed to talk about that even better than I.
Well, I was going to say that around the 50s and 60s, you mentioned that England represents the lower class, the middle class, the struggle and the frustrations of those times. And there's a lot of, after the war or after catastrophes, them picking themselves up. And a lot of these filmmakers told these intimate stories, these realistic stories. And there was within the 50s and 60s, there was a wave of what's called the kitchen sink realism, which was basically telling these gritty, frustrated stories. And we don't have to get into the modern stuff, but you can still see it now. And I think that was...
Well, we'll get into the modern stuff.
If you can point to anything that they have done well, it's telling these very blue-collar, laborious stories and about families or individuals that represent kind of the culture or what the country was going through.
The thing is, there are some master filmmakers that come out of the 40s, 30s, 50s, whatever, stuff that the youngins won't watch.
Well, you were talking about like David Lean and
so the big two names that stand out for me are Powell and Pressburger. They are doing movies at that time that are incredible. The thing is, a lot of Britain's film identity, a lot of their film culture that we are saying doesn't exist, is wrapped up in the war. And the thing is, that you got to remember, they were fighting it a little bit longer than we were. Mm-hmm. And
they got decimated a lot more than our country ever did.
They were reeling from the bombs that got dropped on them more than we were. You know why? Because we didn't get any dropped on us. Unless you happen to live in Oahu. Part of why this question or this prompt that Robert, that this gentleman that was on the podcast you're listening to, is a bit dismissive is it's like, I don't know what they could have done about that. And by the way, they did have some really interesting contributions to film as a fucking art during that time. It just didn't have the reach that it possibly could, but also some really, I have to say, the movies of Powell and Pressburger, and again, I don't care what you're interested in, man. If you're just into like the most Snyder-esque superhero shit that you can get, and
Rebel Moon 5,
that's all you want to watch. Like, I think that you'd still secretly watch some of those Powell and Pressburger movies, like Death of Colonel Blimp or Red Shoes or Black Narcissus, and really get something out of them. And those guys start by doing, war films. And there are a lot of important filmmakers of that time that are doing basically war films, like, How to Carry On. So Powell and Pressburger had the temerity to make films that question the war.
Yeah.
That's what Life and Death of Colonel Blimp kind of is. But most of the filmmakers at the time, their energies were wrapped up in making like, what can we do about the Jerrys?
You said no accents.
Well, I gotta dip a little bit. I gotta dip slight of a toe.
Dip in.
The problem is that there's no unique stories there. It's like, what can we do? Ration. It's like, okay. And you can tell that's, but by the way, I say that, but there are interesting storytelling flourishes, and there is interesting documentary filmmaking techniques that are being innovated there. You just really got to look through that stuff with a very powerful microscope to find it. And so that's just why that's why it's hard not to just immediately answer yes with did they have a film culture?
Well, it's like their film culture it seems like their film culture meant a lot more to them than it did the outside world. And I think where other film cultures kind of transcend different countries and kind of cultures, this was very honed in on what that country was going through.
And that's true, because a big part of their thing, there's something called the heritage film. There's a lot of English literature that's being adopted into film early on and things like that. But Powell and Pressburger are among some of the first that just made movies that were, just amazing to look at. I mean, visually stunning. And, I know that Scorsese?
What is going on?
Jesus. I mean, I'm not even halfway through this. Okay.
I do like Scorsese though.
I kind of like that too. It's like an old film noir villain.
Mm-hmm.
But Scorsese had a lot to do with popularizing Powell and Pressburger. I mean, apparently the only way you could watch those movies before, like the 2000s even, was black and white via television on rerun, if you were lucky enough to catch one on some kind of, on the 10 channels we had back then. But now that we have access to that stuff, you can go back and find really interesting shit in there. And so you talk about the 50s and 60s, the Brits start to try to keep up, and they try to keep up in pop ways, and they try to keep up in artful ways. And like, so they release like their answer to Universal's like horror movies, for example. They have the Hammer movies, and they're not that good, but they're out there, and there's some interesting stuff in there, and that's a very like dismissive. It's very easy to brush that stuff off, but like if you actually look in there, you'll find some stuff, and like they've got serious talent in there. I mean, like they've got like Richard Harris and like Peter Cushing and like.
Well, could I ask you something that happens in the? Could you name something that happens in the 60s that kind of defines a corner?
Are you talking about the Beatles?
No. But that is that. I mean, for two films that is, but something that defines British cinema from the 60s on to now.
Can you narrow it down for me?
It's a franchise.
Are you talking about Bond?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the problem now, because especially around the 50s and 60s, there's a ton. England starts to get much more busy, and they start to make more films that are recognized by an international audience. So we talked about David Lean. There was nobody in the 50s and 60s that didn't know Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago. The problem is, what does Britain? And again, if we interchange those, I mean, people in England are probably just going to be like, you tossers.
Our main audience.
You fucking tossers.
Is it tosslers or tossels?
Tossers.
Tossers.
Yeah.
I always thought there was an L in there.
You bloody wankers.
I know wankers.
You don't understand our heritage and all.
I was going to say.
I just mixed it.
That was Statham.
I mixed an upper class English accent with a lower.
With a Cockney?
Like I say, David Lean's doing Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia. And yeah, you've got the Bond films coming out, and you've got a lot of bigger films, Mr. Chips and things like that. The problem is, I think that the Brits would probably dismiss that stuff because it's funded and produced by America. So that's American films. Now, David Lean did films before that, before he started making movies with Columbia and MGM. Before that, the Brits might consider that as like the authentic David Lean. And he did, again, a series of war films and, Why We Fight and things like that. Actually, that's an American film, but you get the idea. There is a co-opting of British culture that gets popular in America. And stars like Laurence Olivier and Alec Guinness start to become popular. Albert Finney, Richard Harris start to become popular in America. From what a minor research I've done, it seems like the British would probably disavow those as being part of their British film culture.
But what if they're British directors?
And that's where the modern stuff becomes a little bit more prominent because you have now a tradition of American stuff or American produced stuff or American companies or American money that I think the British are more willing to describe as inherently British. Mm-hmm. Whereas for some reason, and I could be wrong about this, I could just be looking at a small sample size of sources, but it seems like I think some of that stuff gets disavowed when it's American produced. But that being said, what you're leaning towards is British culture was celebrated by the rest of the world in certain ways. So Bond is not, you shouldn't kick Bond out of bed, I guess.
Because if anything, it was super representative of the country. It was like it wore the country on its chest, which, as we've talked about, is what kind of defines their film culture. It's always been very prominent in all of those films. Maybe not so much lately, but when it first started in the 60s, like if you didn't know the Broccoli family was American, you would think it was a fully funded British film.
Sure. And I actually think that Barbara Broccoli is from the U.S., but I think that she shares a nationality. Anyway, yeah, right. And so much of the tradecraft of those movies is English or British or, and so just the vibe of that. So, I mean, yeah, so we get into the 50s and 60s, and you mentioned the kitchen sink realism. That is kind of what is defined British film in general. It's gritty over the austerity of like the post-war years. That's like kind of what their identity is. So they do have one. It's just hard for the rest of the world to relate to.
Yeah.
And then in between there's like some swinging 60s kind of shit, trying to be psychedelic, but doing it in cringy ways. And then there's stuff that's just kind of schlocky, like Peeping Tom and like movies like that. The culture is kind of getting out there. You've got like a popularization of like British actors. Hepburn isn't British, is she?
Audrey Hepburn?
Yeah. Anyway, no, but
You're right. Audrey is British.
Yeah. So I mean,
was.
Right. So you've got like the Audrey Hepburns and the Laurence Oliviers, and I think if you ask those, the Richard Attenborough was directing films at the time. I do think if you asked the Brits at that time, they would say like, "Oh well, we're represented in film." But that
was a good George Harrison.
That's the problem again. So I can do a high class British, but when it comes to doing a Cockney,
could you do Michael York?
Well, I'm kind of doing a version of Michael York. I mean, and they all sound the same at a certain level. I can't do the oi. Oh, I can't. That's where I get into trouble, and that's where people will just tune out in droves. If you haven't already, by the way, God bless you. You start to sound like a fucking film school student when you talk about this stuff, Robert. So why don't we move on to the second part of this question?
Yeah, why don't we get to the modern stuff?
So the second question was, regardless of how we feel about that first question, does it have a well-developed one now? And I would say the snap answer is...
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
I kind of think there is one, but it's not as defined. So that's my answer.
I think that there is one. I think that there's enough unique and distinct filmmaking that has happened in the recent years from the Brits.
But it's not cohesive. It's not the same type of film.
But I would say that that's how they've graduated. So I think a lot of Brits would say that the turning point is with Chariots of Fire, because it's the first film of theirs that wins an Oscar. Now, I think it's a little bit reductive to say like that's should be a rubric, but it's a thing that they value very highly. And after Chariots of Fire, you start to see this kind of I don't want to call it a renaissance because it's definitely not that powerful or widespread, but England kind of starts to move out of the 50s and 60s past their very, very rigid censorship phase of their pop culture life. And the BBC comes out, and the BBC starts to give, there are 4 fucking channels at the time, but the BBC starts to give filmmakers a chance to do some things that they might not have had a chance to, and you start to see a proliferation of some more unique voices. So I'm thinking of people like Mike Leigh, thinking about people like Ken Loach. People like that start to get to kind of like, put their feelers out there. And by the time the 90s roll around, now people are kind of ready for unique British voices. And
Danny Boyle.
Well, so that's, again, like that's a Scottish filmmaker. And I think
he is. I thought he was British.
Well, so you could call him British. But I think that now to what you're saying, the Brits get a little bit more cosmopolitan. They kind of loosen the tie a little bit and are willing to let some other stuff in. Stuff that now I think our listeners and our viewers, they're not viewers, will recognize. So you can talk about, there's like the films of your most charmingly befuddled English actor.
Hugh Grant.
He's doing stuff like 4 Weddings and a Funeral. He's doing stuff like Love Actually, eventually. I'm jumping around time-wise here. Well, you shake your head, but they're very, very proud of that shit.
Oh, I know. Love Actually it's a hot topic to hate.
This is why I would say that the modern British shit has caught up or is catching up, because there are phases. It's not just one hegemonic vision. Like, we look towards the future as Britain, the country with boats. It's now they're starting to like do romantic comedies. They're starting to do, I mentioned heritage films. They're starting to do post-heritage films. By that, I mean like things like the Elizabeth movies with like Kate Blanchett. They're looking back at their history, but they're not just painting it with this fucking beautiful, perfect brush. They're willing to kind of like give another interpretation on that stuff. Another example is The Favorite, like from Yorgos Lanthimos. And again, I'm jumping around in time here because we're just talking about contemporary as one block. There's also social realism films, but you mentioned the gangster films.
Well, you got Guy Ritchie. You also Steve McQueen stuff comes to mind.
And Steve McQueen is an interesting one because he fits into all these categories. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's doing the class thing. If you looked at his films and if you compared them historically to some of the kind of more traditional British films, he kind of fits in there too. So right. And what is the name of the series of the 4 films that I'm forgetting? One of them starred Jason Boyega. Another one was A House Party.
I know what you're talking about.
What is the name of that series? Because I feel like that like represents what we're talking about perfectly. It's like there are these little.
There's something Axe, wasn't it?
Is it Bad Axe? Strong Axe?
Keep going.
Axe body spray. But so
Small Axe.
I feel like those are like a perfect encapsulation of like what a lot of interesting new British voices are kind of doing. Like, so you got people like Stephen Queen, you got like Joanna Hogg,
Martin McDonough,
McDonough.
But he's Irish, isn't he?
Yes, he is Irish. Of course he is, because all of his casts are Irish. But there are hybrid British films. So I don't know if the Brits would be totally in love with these, but these are like movies that take old American genres and interject them with their own spin. And you know who the master of that is?
We can say Nolan?
No.
Why am I blanking?
I'm thinking of Edgar Wright. I mean, you got, but that's what you call, I guess, a hybrid, or hot fuzz or something like that. That's the British infused action. And in fact, like that movie goes out of its way to tell you, that yes, these are influences, Bad Boys 2 and fucking Point Break and shit, but
they're still extremely British.
Yeah, but that's why they're thought of as the hybrid films. It's like we're gonna infuse it with our own brand, with our own fucking gin. There's now a rich British horror tradition. I don't know. I mean,
you're missing a very big British filmmaker.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll be here all day, but you're talking about
he did a recent rendition of a famous Broadway play that we all watched drunkenly and loved.
Oh, Tom Hoops?
Tom Hoops. The Helmer of Cats.
Oh, Jesus fucking fuck. Christals. What are we to do with that film?
Nothing.
But it is distinctly British. I think that they would be happy to own that. But I mean, so when you get into the modern shit, I do think that they are a little bit more willing to accept modern stuff that has American money as distinctly British.
Well, the modern stuff is there's a plethora of British filmmakers doing very experimental things. But like I said, I wouldn't count it as a cultural wave of filmmaking. They're all doing different, distinct things. They're just prominently British now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think that there's this new wave of the A24 British films, you know, and like, so I mentioned Joanna Hogg and Charlotte Wells, who does After Sun, and then you've got your boy who does All of Us Strangers. He's got to have a pale penis. What? He's British. They all have pale penis. They do. Andrew Hay. Hi?
That's what it is. Andrew High. I think it's High.
Hi. Hey, hi. Hi, hey. He goes into the pub and it's just like a sketch from old vaudeville. Hey, hi. You talking to me? No, I'm talking to Hey, not you. Hi. Oh,
It's
hello.
the fucking
No, I'm not talking to you either.
What's the Abbott and Costello of
Who's on
British?
First? It's the Who's on First of British pub comedy. We're innovating here today. I mean, look, we can't just sit here and name British filmmakers, but I think that what is clear is that there's now a very rich tradition of filmmakers that are doing stuff that has a very, very broad appeal. I'd say it starts. They might argue that it starts around the time of Chariots of Fire. I don't know if Long Good Friday is a British film exclusively, but it certainly has that vibe. I mean, it's all British actors, and if you haven't seen that film, it fucking rips. And that's like in the late 80s, I want to say. God, I gotta get that right.
While you're doing that, can I ask one quick question before we go into the next segment?
1980, please.
Can you, off the top of your head, is there a filmmaker that's working now that you would say is innovating a new way of filmmaking?
You know, I it's easy to bring up Nolan just because he's so prolific and he's just so out there. I mean, you brought up Danny Boyle, and I think like if we're going to put him in that tradition. Now, again, I realize he's Scottish, and especially
even stylistically, he does different stuff.
I do think that unfortunately, because Brexit farted into their own mouths with that political decision they made.
Super cool.
Soup's cool political decision they arrived at. I do think that we have to tread carefully in roping in like a Danny Boyle with the rest of with England, because I think they would be pretty mad about that. Fair enough. I get it.
I think the question was about waves or cultural shifts in filmmaking. And I think that 20, 30 years from now, we'll look back and maybe one is happening right now and we just don't know it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It might be hard to see in hindsight, but I do think that what is clear is the films that have come out of the last 20 years are going to have much more staying power than probably anything else that England has really done, except for maybe some of those just amazing epics, some of those big sweeping heritage movies that actually have staying power. And again, my boys Powell and Pressy P and Mikey Powell. Well, and we can't forget the most influential film that maybe the Brits have ever contributed.
Austin Powers?
No.
But that was American.
Be serious here. The most influential and important film.
I feel like this is sarcasm.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
They've contributed to pop culture in so many. Do you not know what this is?
No. What's that clip?
Hang on. Guys, this is incredible. I Mr. Frank hasn't been privy to one of England's most important contributions to pop culture. Now, it's not a film per se, but it's from.
Why is he wearing? Who's this dog?
Look, it's one of the most important.
He's wearing a tie-dye shirt.
This is probably more influential than anything that we've mentioned here today. So I just want to.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
What is happening?
Nobody knows.
We're playing for HTQ a little bit later.
Nobody knows. That's why it's magical.
If you'd like to play HTQ, email Steve if you say happy.
Is the dog crying or is he laughing?
Well, I think that the actor is crying, and that the puppeteer is.
Do get permission and leave your phone number because by Jingo.
By
By
Jingo.
Jingo.
Oh, you're just kidding. You love this.
What?
I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know what it's about, but it's a very much meme-ified clip. To be honest, I have no idea what this is.
I'm so confused.
So I actually follow a guy on X. Every other Monday he posts this clip, and he's got like millions of followers on his X account, and it's just people that want to be reminded.
We're just normal men.
I don't know why, and it's a kids show. I don't know why. I don't know why it exists. What it is. And it is a dog. It's a dog puppet. I know that much. But that's all I know.
I'm speechless. I need another drink.
We're just normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
We're just innocent men. And you know what? Maybe that's the final lesson we need to take from our diatribe about England is that, you know what, England?
We're just normal men.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. I think that, no one could possibly have done a better job than we have just now.
You're welcome.
There's not a wealth of scholastic resources or education that you could get about the subject. No, you come here for a reason. There's nothing you can do about it. You're welcome, Robert. We can't just sit here and name brilliant British filmmakers. We'd be here all fucking day. So
It's okay. We did it. Don't be so hard on yourself.
I think we've done what we can. Robert, I hope that you feel vindicated. Thank you, Mr. Carlisle, for listening to the show.
Thank you.
We haven't even touched on the mix. And I could say that because I am one.
Let's go get another drink for this subject.
We haven't even touched on them. Kenneth Branagh's twirling in his grave. He's not dead.
He's not dead.
We'll take a break after a cocktail.
Just staring at the light. And then I looked in and I saw bread. I thought, oh yeah, I'll have toast. A little piece of toast. Well, then I started getting older. I hated this, I hated that. Expensive steak was ludicrous and cafes couldn't cater for the finer things in life. The upper crust was not for me. I could tell that. So I'd go back home, switch the kitchen light on, put the grill on, slip a slice under, and have toast. A little piece of toast. 'Cause there's so much to
Let us move on. We're going to proceed into the second of the three ways that we use to examine the current affairs of the world of cinema by unpacking the ideas and assertions we stumble across out there in the media, be it social or otherwise. And today we have, I guess it's tweet relating to an article. There's an article from a source that I also think is trash. So I'm not going to name that source.
No names. Just normal men.
But the article,
We're just normal men.
But the article, which is trash, says Alex Garland no longer plans to direct films after falling out of love with filmmaking. And the response is the one that I want to...
For context, Alex Garland is the director of the upcoming Civil War film. He's
not upcoming, it's out now. And
he's done Annihilation, he did Ex Machina,
yes.
And he's written several films.
He's the showrunner on Devs. He's... but that's the thing. I mean, well, we'll get back to his writing career.
We'll come back to that.
The thing is, though, yeah, he's quite prolific, and he's been around, and he'll continue to be around. But the thing is, this is the tweet that we want to react to. And it is a tweet. It's not an X, because nobody calls it that. A gentleman on said platform says, must be nice. Others would kill to be in his position. He's walking away from it because, meh. And that's the same voice that he used in his brain. That's like the interior monologue sounded exactly. No, listen. Okay, so here's the thing. Part of the reason that our policy is in place, and by the way, this should be an easy segment to get through because there's not a whole lot to say. But I will say this for this gentleman, and I usually don't come out in defense of the people that we're decrying or the ideas that we are bashing. I did look through this guy's kind of like responses. Again, per our policy, is like we like to avoid going after the little guy. But I did kind of read his kind of response because he got this tweet got around 40,000 views, and like I'm sure that there was some definitely. I mean, he's been ratioed. If you guys don't know what that means, it means there's more responses than likes. But to read his responses, he sounds like he's actually not a shitty guy, and he's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I guess it just seems like kind of a wasted opportunity. He's not like, it doesn't sound like this is like your typical
a clickbaity type response.
This doesn't seem like a fucking edge troll. This just seems like somebody who is definitely feeling like I'm not willing to extend any kind of sympathy for somebody who would just walk away from such a grand opportunity. And look, I get it. Mr. Frank and I both work in the biz. God, do you know people that actually call it the business?
The industry?
I mean, I know people that call it the industry, but like,
not the biz.
Have you ever been like I feel like I have been in a situation where somebody's like, the business? You're just one of these.
It's usually entertainment business. It's usually one and one.
Well, anyway, I digress. So if people know who said this or can like identify this person based on the tweet I just read, he actually seems like he's a relatively thoughtful person. I will just say I do want to push back against that sentiment. Can you think of any reason why that might be kind of a grating thing to respond to that article? Alex Garland no longer plans to direct films after falling out of love with filmmaking.
Well, my initial response is, what do you want him to do? Just do his job until he dies? Like, if it was any other capacity...
Do you want him to do something that his fucking heart's not in? I mean...
Yeah, I get it if it like, if you're looking at it from a financial standpoint, it's like, oh, he's walking away from a lot of money, blah, blah, but it's also a choice. And if he's not feeling it, he's not feeling it, just like anybody would have a choice in their profession or whatever they do in their lives.
Well, so first of all, Civil War just came out, and it was pretty fucking good. So here's the thing. I mean, it's very clear that he's a guy with a vision. He's a visionary.
I hate when they say visionary director. From visionary director. Every director is a visionary director.
It means
by that term.
Every single property that they create is
their vision,
a specific and unique vision. Yeah, gosh, you have such a specific eye roll,
an aggressive eye roll.
Let's talk about Alec Garland just briefly. How do you feel about the man? How do you feel about his work?
It's great.
Okay,
it's great.
Thanks for your input.
No. I think
we can really base the show off.
No, I think his work is very unique. I think each movie feels like there's a lot of heart and a lot of effort put into it, and it feels more like an event than it does an actual film. And I can only imagine how much effort and time and just kind of brain power goes into making those films. It kind of reminds me of like the Flight of the Conchords guys did season 1 of Flight of the Conchords, and everybody loved it. And they're like, when's season 2 coming? And they're like, it's not, because you know how long it took us to get that season 1 perfect? And
well, so first of all, you've definitely hit on something important. When is a thing of labor of love versus it just being commercial bullshit? But second of all, this is part of the PSA element of this show that, this is a learning moment. But this shouldn't really tax our viewers, they're not viewers, brains too significantly. When you see a statement like this in response to a thing, I guess what I want to drill into our listeners is to always try to go 2 or 3 steps back. So if you see somebody go like, fucking J-Lo shouldn't have said that, and then you see an article that's like, J-Lo says Ben Affleck's a slob. Yeah, and then you go back to that source. I just want you to keep going back a few sources until you can get to the source of sources. You know what I mean?
Because there's a big piece that's left out from this comment.
It's always about fucking context. And so let's go back a couple of sources. So basically, the shit rag that was trying to make a clickbaity headline frames it incorrectly. So yes, it does sound like he's done. But he gives a reason, and it's not as simple as he fell out of love with filmmaking. So I want to read a little bit from what I can tell. It's the original article that this all stems from. It's The Guardian. It's a British publication. British.
That's more cockney.
Ain't no fucking T in it. What kind of accent am I doing now? I don't know. This is why I didn't try it in the past segment.
You did try it in the past segment.
And I was much more successful then. This is why we shouldn't take drink breaks in the middle of our segments. Here's just a brief piece of that article. So it starts by saying, it often happens that acclaimed indie directors rise in industry status only to discover with bigger budgets come greater creative restrictions. But Garland, who's full of praise for A24, says that isn't it. The pressure doesn't come from money. It comes from the fact that you're asking people to trust something that, on the face of it, doesn't look very trustworthy. He gives an example of sitting in a car park outside Atlanta, asking Civil War cast to believe that one day the VFX blue screen behind them will be a night sky lit up by mortar fire. Or on Ex Machina, where Alicia Vikander and Sonia Manuzzo are trusting that nudity is going to be dealt with thoughtfully and respectfully, when cinema leans towards not doing that. This is the deep sense of responsibility to cast and crew that, quote, literally keeps me awake at night. He's less burdened by controversies that have been swirling around Civil War since long before anyone had actually seen it, namely that it's reckless or at least in poor taste. To release such a film at a time in American history when insurrectionary violence seems like a realistic possibility. So it sounds like the actual process of making films is taxing on the man.
Well, he's disenchanted with it.
Yeah, well, but it also sounds, and you can we can post this article, but it sounds like he takes a deep responsibility of guiding his cast and crew through his process in a way that is really stressful for him. Mm-hmm. And you can see why, because I mean, look. So he's done, this will be his fourth or fifth film.
Was Ex Machina his first?
Ex Machina is his first.
Ex Machina, Annihilation, Men, in no particular order.
We're just normal men.
Yeah, I mean, so...
And then...
and so then
Civil War. So four.
So this is his fourth film. But he's been around. He's been around the block. He's been screenwriting forever. He's been producing forever.
Which he's still going to screenwrite.
And that's the thing that this story goes on to tell, and that's the big missing piece of this. So it's like when you see Diplomaniacal 69 or, Ghost of Clitmas Past or whatever the guy's name was on Twitter, when you see that response, like, oh, you just walk away. Well, no, he's not going to walk away. Like, this is the guy's bread and butter.
Well,
he's got
also,
kids.
when you have a headline that says he's walking away from filmmaking, it's not true because screenwriting is filmmaking.
But also the notion that he has somehow fallen out of love with it. Well, no, it sounds like his passion is...
He loves it so much.
He burns too deeply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wants to make sweet, sweet love to filmmaking. So
he goes on to explain his filmmaking, and actually this article really is worth reading. Again, it's on The Guardian, and we'll post to it. But towards the end of the article, the writer says, I have to say, listening to Garland speak so passionately about these ongoing projects, he doesn't sound like a man who's fallen out of love with filmmaking. And then he says, no, I have, he insists, serious again. I do actually love film, but filmmaking doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a life and also in a broader context. I have to say, in a way, without being rude, like this, he gestures towards me, the Guardian journalist with no dictaphone. No offense taken. So it sounds like it's just directing is really fucking with his brain.
Yeah.
And he's fallen out of love with filmmaking. We're getting into semantics here.
Yeah.
Like you say, producing, screenwriting, fucking as we alluded to in our auteur discussion, craft services is filmmaking.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he's always going to lend his talents towards one of those aspects of the process. And whether he wants to identify that with being an actual quote-unquote filmmaker or not, that's up to him.
Well, it's also something to applaud that you have self-awareness of your own mental health and also your situation and desire to make art or not make art and to bow out at the right time. I mean, how many directors or filmmakers or in any capacity in the filmmaking world did they overstay their welcome in a sense and kind of churn out products that are less than what their peak was because they just don't know when the right time is to bow out?
Well, so here's an interesting question. Can you think of any filmmakers that have retired that don't get this kind of flack? I mean, I think maybe like a John McTiernan or...
Soderbergh threatened retirement or did for a couple of years, and I know there was a lot of... I mean, I can think of actors that have retired. It's usually health-wise, though. They don't up and do it in their prime.
Well, so we were talking about Ken Loach in our past segment, and I remember that I hope I'm not misattributing this quote, but a lot of filmmakers don't retire. A lot of filmmakers don't have a fucking choice. The thing is, and I think that a notion that this tweet forgets is it's not easy just because you have one or two successful films in the bag. You still have to lobby to make a film. You still have to pitch your films. You still have to be in good standing with the studios. And honestly, man, I can see wanting to forego all that and just have like a very niche job in the industry and just wanting to leave some of that behind.
Not only that, you have a solid filmography that you leave behind. I mean, this is the whole Tarantino thing, but also
So Tarantino, for those who don't know, has said that after 10 films, he's going to retire.
Which there's something admirable about that. So it's either you know when you hang your hat up when you're at your peak and you kind of don't want the backslide to happen, or you end up like Robert Altman and you kind of just don't have a great back end of your career because you don't know when to drop it.
Well, so Ford Coppola is making another film.
And he can't find funding.
Right, but he made the film. He funded it himself.
Yeah. But now nobody wants to market it.
If this
or
thing
buy it.
flops or no distributors pick it up and he gets, it doesn't get seen anywhere and no money gets interjected into it on the back half of its life, he can only lean on that wine money for so long.
He sold a big chunk of that to fund this film.
Sure. So, I mean, what is he going to do if he wants to make another one? So that's the thing that this forgets is you don't become an established filmmaker and then suddenly it's just easy street for the rest of your fucking life. That is part of where I do want to clamp down against this gentleman, as well-intentioned as he seems like he might be. You don't just become an established actor, director, filmmaker, film composer, whatever it is in any element of this industry, and just have a fucking smooth ride for the rest of the time. Well, there's always gonna be politics to it. There's always going to be a struggle to get your shit made. And there's also always going to be the concern that you will fade away into obscurity, or like Tarantino, part of the reason Tarantino wants it. Tarantino's famously always saying like there's no old man directors with a good filmography. Now, I don't quite agree with him there, but he's right in a certain point is that, man, your work does certainly seem to fall off.
Look at Clint Eastwood.
Point. Well,
you love Clint.
I think that he's got some good stuff on the back.
You like J. Edgar, didn't you?
Jesus, fuck no. Get the out of here.
But I do think that even if you do strike gold in a film and it's well received and it's studios, you're the hot thing and they want to throw money at you, the process of making that next film is still a grind. It's not easy.
No.
So even if you have the funding and that's not part of the grind, making the film itself.
Well, so, and I asked you about his filmography. Is there anything that you can think of in those past 4 films that they might have in common, just broadly? Wouldn't you say that all of his films come from a very depressed worldview? Wouldn't you say that they're all? I don't want to say they're cynical, but wouldn't you say that they all have a viewpoint of humankind that is not positive?
So you're saying that it's kind of like what
they're a bit macabre. They're a bit they speak to a worldview that is dour,
so
but
it's kind of similar. And I'm not putting one-on-one when I say this, but it's famously known that when Spielberg was making Schindler's List, it was a fucking awful time for him for many reasons. And so if you're making, again, I'm not comparing Garland's films to the Holocaust.
No. We all remember when the man that got birthed at the end of that weird ass movie, when the scene went black and white and his red dress stood out against the contrast.
But what I'm saying is if you're spending every day on a film sets, back-to-back films of these dour subjects like you're talking about, it can get depressing.
That's what I was going for. So I just feel like the subject matter alone is enough to, like, if you have to inhabit those worlds long enough, if you spend enough time in a creative headspace, it can be easy to, I think a little bit too much is made of like the whole Heath Ledger plays the Joker and suddenly now that's why he's like doing drugs and is suicidal. But I do think there is something to being steeped in a subject matter that makes you go, oh, fuck. and
we get downtrodden by just the work that we do. So could you imagine being in a world where robots can overthrow and trap you in a building and then leave you for dead and all that? Like,
well, and what it has to say about humankind, I mean, like that movie in particular, Ex Machina, has like a very cynical view of humankind. It's like you are just a meat computer and you're easily manipulated by the things that we created that are now smarter than us and are going to take over. You know? Civil War, as we have just seen, is a movie about how the extremes of the political spectrum are not that dissimilar. And while there are definitely some clear bad guys, there are honest voices that are trying to get through and get stifled very easily. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, that one's not necessarily about like a Fibonacci alien that lives in like a world stalker zone, all Annihilation.
It's a great movie.
It's less like heady. Yeah, I actually do think that it's like, you know, if I'm not willing to call it great, I'd say it's slept on.
That's a good rewatch. It's like his Prestige.
Here's what I'll say. That movie does do a few things that are cringeworthily bad, but they're not enough to make the movie bad. Like the movie is solid all the way through.
If Gina Rodriguez wasn't in it, it would be a little
that's
bit
bad.
better.
The bear that's got the screaming voice,
That
the screaming
scene's
human
not
voice.
great.
But also, I gotta be honest with you, and I know that we just had to talk about the Brits. I gotta say, I don't need Tessa Thompson anymore.
Oh, I forgot she's in it.
I don't.
Well,
need
you
her.
anymore. You've been off her.
I've been
her
off
train
for
a long
that's
time.
That's fair. I've been off.
You never got on the train.
I never. Even I love Boots Riley. Never even got on
Sorry to bother you.
Yeah, never even got on the Tessa Thompson Sorry to Bother You train. And I'm a big fan of his. There's something about. I mean, you saw the Man in Black International thing, right?
No.
Oh man. Well,
you did.
Oof. Well, I mean, I drunkenly post up in front of
You gave me shit for drunkenly watching Black Adam, and you're watching Men in Black International.
First of all, how dare you? I will at least say that it was no Black Adam. That's true. So for the children, okay. Actually, this is
This might be the worst movie I've heard you ever say that you've willingly watched.
Well, no. First of all, willingly is going a step too far. Children, back in the day, there was a thing called cable. And what cable was, is it would just play the thing that they programmed. Hang on, before you interject. Cable would just play what's going to happen. You know, they had what's called programming. They would program what's called a block of entertainment for you. That's where phrases like prime time come from. Like they had shows that they were going to put on it, you know, when they knew people would be home and shit. That's not how shit works anymore. Now you pick a thing you want to watch.
You watch it.
And algorithm chooses what is going to come on next after that. So maybe I chose, I don't know, Extra 2, and I put that on. And then afterwards, I'm too fucking drunk to get up. The remote's
you have the remote
far
right
away.
in front of you.
I can't move. I mean, I can move, but I won't. You know, as the fucking streaming services are wont to do, they just skip the credits and go straight into the next film.
Wait, so you're telling me you didn't get up within the whole film to grab the remote on your way to another drink or the bathroom?
There's like aliens in it. I'm like, oh, I like aliens. I like creatures.
I know you. And the second that Men in Black 4 or whatever came up,
didn't do anything about it.
To the remote.
Didn't do anything about it. You know what?
How drunk were you at this point?
I don't know. I don't remember how the film ends. If that's if that's how it. Listen, you laugh, but this is a valid excuse, and this is what cable is like for drunks back in the day. You're welcome, kids. I'm just saying. That's why that's part of the reason I got off the Tessa Thompson train. She also just seems really smug. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Alex Garland. No, listen. Inhabiting that headspace could be a problem. And doing it for a long enough time could be a problem. And I don't begrudge the guy at all for wanting to step back into a more creative role where he can still be depressed.
It's none of people's business what the dude does. I don't begrudge him being like, I'm going to quit because I'm bored of it.
Yeah. Why can't he just go, why can't he be at the top of his game? Like, why can't he be like, so like if Greta Gerwig was like, I just don't want to make movies anymore tomorrow.
How does that affect your life?
It doesn't. It shouldn't. Again, I think that this is all a bit of like, you just don't know like how desperately the rest of us are suffering. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But it doesn't mean that this person's choice is invalid or well, you know, and I don't get that from this tweet. I mean, the guy's not saying like you owe it to us to make more films. It's just like it's a very cavalier statement of like, oh, real easy to walk away. Well, no, I have to imagine that he wrestled with this for some time.
Well, yeah, and it's also on one end, if you're disappointed that he's going to retire from directing, that's one thing. Like, I am disappointed that he's not going to be directing any films moving forward for the time being. Sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a choice is a choice. It's his life. And I mean, this is a very broad, general, let him live his life, man. If Tarantino wants to retire after 10 films, it sucks, but he's going to do it. And that's fine.
Also,
that's
you know, look, it's very clear that the man labors to like do an art. It's very clear that like he's got a very dark philosophy that is guiding his worldview, and maybe this is his attempt to unburden himself from being in that place every day.
Listen, he labored through that Natalie Portman alien scene.
Which is a fucking great scene.
I love that scene.
See, that's the problem with that film, Annihilation, is like there will be 20 minutes of great and then 30 seconds of cringe.
My problem is there's not enough Oscar Isaac.
I can live without the Oscar Isaac.
What do you don't like Oscar Isaac?
No, but it's a movie about women. I'm okay with... I love the way it ends. I love the alien thing. Mm-hmm. And I even like the Kira Sedgwick character.
No, it wasn't Kira Sedgwick.
Who am I thinking of?
It was Jennifer Jason Leigh.
You're right.
I was going to say, if you challenge me, I was going to bet
No,
you
you're
a
right.
shot.
Because I am in Kira Sedgwick territory. It's because for our soundboard, which we finally
Did you watch the closer?
We finally have a sound.
We're just normal men.
I was looking at some Reach Me quotes, which will be on the soundboard, and she's front and center.
Oh, she has that big first scene.
She gets face butted. Yeah, she does. She gets the smell up in that brown.
She gets face butted.
She does. She goes.
Is it better to say I butt faced you, or
she climbs
or you
into
got face butted?
No, she climbs into the moist folds of that butt.
But she doesn't climb it. It's thrust upon her.
It's thrust upon her face.
So it's butt faced.
You know what? You're right.
If you're willingly doing it, it's face butted.
I think it feels more natural to say you were face butted if somebody thrusts their butt in your face.
See, I think it's better to say, or it makes more sense to say butt faced.
Well, listeners, you'll have to wait for the soundboard editions to make your final judgment. But anyway, okay. Well, let's get off this. This is an easy one. Again, the Jerry Springer final moment that you need to take from this is when you see a big declarative statement like, I don't know, what does this guy think he is and what's he think he's doing with it? Derp. And then it's relating to some story or some article or some BuzzFeed bullshit. Just go back 2 or 3 steps and read the source.
Step back.
Step on back. And we're actually gonna I actually think it's a pretty good article, so we're gonna post it in our show notes. But go and do it. All right, let's move on.
Reasons you could never tell when and how that you should quit your job. This why pages on the case. I'm here to fix your problem. Number 1, quit on payday right after you cash your check before they try to cancel it, cause that's their last offense. Cause 2, there's gotta be something better to do than working harder than these folks is living better than you. And 3, this is important. Be sure to not give notice, cause they won't give notice when they fire you, and you should know this. 4, steal anything that isn't bolted down. Stash it in a safe place and move it slowly out. And 5, when you fed up and ready to retire, you're on your way out the door. Just pull the Jerry Maguire like, who's coming with me?
We're going to move on to the third of the 3 ways that we try to restore sanity to the disco. Go to the club and we damn disco. I don't know. We have got a video, and we described the cringe that we felt at the hands of the ticking and the talking. And look, there's different flavors of ticking and talking. All right.
I don't like this.
There's cooking horrible creations with your stupid recipes.
I like those.
There's singing.
I don't like the singing.
There's the singing in
like
front
the
of the
dancing.
sunset. You're all dancing.
I like the cooking.
Do you? Because can you really trust that those recipes are all vetted?
I mean, what do you think is going to happen to you?
If somebody just like throws a Velveeta fucking singlet.
I'm not going off those ones.
What do you like?
I vet my recipe videos.
So you're saying you've got the inside track on the good shit?
I'm not going to Chef Reactions and like doing the awful ones that he sees.
I'm just saying. Well, so that's another genre's reactions. I mean, it's just like, oh my god, we watched Mamma Mia 2. And did you realize that you can see Stellan Skarsgård gooning in the background of each musical number? Whatever it is.
We digress. What is happening here?
I'm sorry. Have I made you uncomfortable?
Just a normal man.
This is a post. As we just described, you're all dancing and you're all doing your recipes and you're all doing your film criticism.
I hate this first still.
No, this is great.
Do you want me to describe?
Per this segment, we're going to go through it once. So this is a very chatty segment, so we won't have to do a lot of commentary. But per this segment, we're just going to watch a piece of media just to see what it teaches us about the media landscape. Okay, it's not necessarily to do with cinema or film. Just we want to know what's going on. Like maybe we'll learn. We're going to watch it once. Maybe we'll point a few things out about it while we're watching it. But then we'll watch again and we'll kind of stop through it. But we're right off the bat. We're just going to dive right into it.
I don't want to.
Woo! What's the first thing that you notice about this? The first frame.
There's a blonde woman in like Britney Spears-esque hairdo, a very bright pink top, and her
you're
leg.
Giving it too much credit. I think that this is what's the name of the lady that makes the meat pies in Sweeney Todd?
Mrs. Lovett?
Yeah, this is Mrs. Lovett.
Well, also, what's happening with her leg? Her leg's very high. It must be.
She needs you to see it. Well, first of all,
this is not even the biggest thing.
Okay, well, I'll say this, and I've seen this. This young lady or older lady, can't be sure. Where is she?
She's at a graveyard.
Okay.
Clearly at a graveyard.
Does she look like she's dressed for the graveyard?
No, and she looks way too happy to be at a graveyard.
So she's scantily clad, which I know, and I know that you youngins are afraid of the sexuals, and I want to tell you first of all, it's okay. It's okay to explore, but just as we've learned from the Sydney Sweeney debacle, sometimes you throw them out, you get too much attention. Okay. It's nighttime. It's a fucking cemetery.
There's like a shotgun light on the camera, so it's like very.
Yeah, she got her fucking TikTok ring light.
Yeah,
ready to go. It's nighttime in a cemetery. Let's just see what she has to tell us about what she's doing out here, and she's out here for a reason.
I'm at the graveyard at night.
Yep. So now she's digging up a grave.
Abandoned grave. For free. I have so many questions in my head. What happened? How did this grave get so dirty?
The grave is dirty.
She's here. Her name's Bienvenida. Wow.
She's scraping mud off the grave.
Wait a minute. Her grave should be welcoming too. But right now, this is the dirtiest grave I've ever seen. That's so unfair. Everyone deserves a beautiful resting place. Bienvenida died on July 23rd, 1980. Her star sign is Aries.
My best friend is an Aries.
I wonder what Bienvenida's life was like. Does she like chocolate cupcakes? What killed her?
Why do you have those?
This transformation is a lot of work. I might be here all night, but it's so fun.
Ooh, a little bug.
Thank you to everyone who supports and follows. I'm at the graveyard at night.
Okay. So, I mean, Brittany here doesn't stop talking, so it's hard to get a commentary edgewise in there. So that's fine. We've broken Matt. We've broken him. He's broken. Okay.
Yeah, I need you to ask me questions because I'm going to go all different directions.
What was she doing there? First of all, so you just saw the film, and it is a film. It's a little film, just like every ejaculation is a little death. Jesus, it's a little film. What does she do? What's she doing out there in the graveyard?
She's doing. Okay, so I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt with this description.
You don't have to.
But to give context.
Okay.
On its face, she is doing a very nice thing.
Okay.
Or attempting to do a very nice thing. She is seeing a tombstone in a grave that is not in good shape and wants to do the right thing in shedding light to the person and cleaning it up and getting it back into pristine condition.
So yes, because this is, and again, I've mentioned this many times, but it was a brilliant stroke on our part to make the third segment in our audio predominant show visual.
We'll post our reaction.
Yes,
to
we
this.
want you to follow along. Go to the show notes.
Look in the description of the episode, and you'll find the link to follow along.
You believe that she had good intentions?
No. So
well, that's where we get into the weeds.
Yes. So my initial description is what on its face a good person that was doing this would be doing. Mm-hmm. Like that is what she is trying to perceive to others that she is doing.
Some people might not see the video. So what we had is a very perky person decided that there's a grave that was a little bit too dirty, and she wants to beautify it. She wants to clean it up.
Which, if you just said that and then showed video of you doing it, maybe that's okay. But you filming it, eating cupcakes over it, butchering,
what are you talking about?
Butchering Spanish, doing all this stuff while you're cleaning it.
She's got a clear mastery of these things. You know what?
That's
Before we go any further, why don't we just go through it step by step now?
Okay.
All right, here we go.
I'm at the graveyard.
Yes, she's at the graveyard.
The thing is, I half expected her. You know those videos where it's like, I just discovered the newest restaurant in LA.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be like a spoof that was like, I just found the greatest graveyard.
It's the same fucking energy. And look,
there are dead people everywhere.
I'm not a power crystals type. I don't believe in magic. I don't believe in woo-woo shit. I don't believe in Jeebus.
But you believe in karma
or the Devil. No, I don't believe in that either. Even if you don't believe in those things,
don't tempt.
Maybe maybe you should have a reverence for so-called sacred places. Now, does that mean that I think that you should, like, I don't know, fucking do the sign of the cross every time you walk in front of a Catholic church? No. What I do think that means is, like, maybe understand that there are other people that have beliefs that differ from yours, and like what you're doing,
especially if you didn't contact the family or anything.
Well, that's the real question. Now, maybe she did.
She definitely did not.
But even if she did, which I'm inclined to agree with you.
Which this is
okay. We're gonna
this goes. My one question is, if she doesn't know the family, she had to look for this grave, this dirty grave.
Sure. Oh, the other thing is, okay, and always we're going through it step by step here. So immediately, I'm at the graveyard. There's just like the vibe. The vibes don't match.
No.
Okay, that's a way that. Okay, so I'm at the graveyard. That's like saying like I'm having a filling done today. You know, what I mean, it's just okay. So let's keep going.
Well, that was why we mentioned her
at night.
We mentioned her clothes not because we're trying to say anything about how she dresses. It doesn't fit the setting.
It's because it's nighttime and she's doing fucking gardening work. Okay, so now the next thing we see is she's now.
You think she has a shooter? You think she brought somebody with her, or she's shooting this herself?
No, I bet she's doing this all by her alone.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so now she's digging some shit off of the side of the grave. Now, I hope that she wasn't looking for valuables. Let's keep going.
Cleaning this abandoned grave for free.
Okay. Clean this abandoned grave for free. Well, so first of all, the headstone on the grave is a heart, and the cleaning material that she's using is bright pink.
I thought she was spray painting it in the beginning.
Now, it's just it seems to me it's really convenient. She chose a heart-shaped grave and a bright pink cleaning agent. I'm just saying, the two might go hand in hand.
But also, I'm doing this for free. Give me kudos.
Some people have main character syndrome. Okay.
No one asked me to do this
for free. Yes, it's the emphasis that she puts on that free. For free.
Yeah.
Assholes. Stop judging me already. Well, why would we judge you?
And engrave for free. I have so many questions in my head. What?
So she doesn't know the person.
I have so many questions in my head. I doubt it.
Happened? How did this?
What happened?
She died.
It's so dirty.
That's what happened.
Questions in my head. What happened? How did this grave get so dirty?
It's outside, motherfucker.
Weather, dirt.
I have so many questions in my head. So do we.
What happened? How did this grave get so dirty? Who's buried here?
A person.
The name's on the motherfucking headstone. It's on the headstone. Read it.
She can't through the pink goop.
Oh my god. Who is this?
Keep going. We have to get through this.
Okay.
Here. Her name's Bienvenida.
Wow. Her name is welcome in Espanol.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the bad. This is.
It's not even that she tries to drop that nugget on us like it's this big chunk of wisdom. It's the vibe, man. It's the fucking delivery.
Like I said.
No, that's not.
Like I said, it's like she discovered a restaurant and is like, they make their food. They use grass-fed beef.
All the while, she's rubbing astringent chemicals onto a fucking headstone. Now listen, I'm not a chemist.
That no one asked her to do.
Well, yes, we'll get to that. But I can tell you this. I guarantee you whatever she's rubbing on that fucking grave.
Not good for it.
Not good for it at all.
No.
Bikini at all. Not good. Let's keep going.
Her name is welcome in Espanol.
Wait a minute. Her grave should be welcoming too. But right now.
Okay. What if her name was like, I don't know, Marisol? Does that mean that her grave shouldn't be welcoming? I digress. This is just flawed logic on this asshole's part.
welcome in Espanol.
Wait a minute. Her grave should be welcoming too. But right now, this is the dirtiest
hold on,
grave I've
you got to
ever
pause
seen.
there.
Yeah. So
I love.
she holds up the sponge that she's
but
using.
it's one of those smiley face
Yes.
sponges.
So clearly already,
but she's product placing it.
Yes. So we've already. So now we've already happed on to the worst thing about this whole thing, and we'll come back to it because we're going to make our way through this. But just keep in mind that there's a lot of products going on here, and then now she's holding up the
smiley face sponge,
the well-known smiley face abrasive sponge. Okay.
Now, this is the dirtiest grave I've ever seen.
The dirtiest grave.
No way that's possible.
Yeah. Okay. So imagine this is your family member, and you come across this video,
Look at
and
these scuzz.
she calls your your wife, your mother, your sister's grave the dirtiest grave that someone has literally
Clearly
ever
this
seen.
family never loved this person.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't. It's none of your fucking business, Bambi.
I've ever seen. That's so unfair. Everyone deserves
unfair.
Listen, I know this is hard for everyone to accept, but eventually Father Time will claim everybody that you love and that they loved and that they loved after them, and that you will be forgotten. And if your grave survives, that's a fucking plus.
This person died. That's so unfair.
It's gross. Ew.
I've ever seen. That's so unfair. Everyone deserves a beautiful resting place. Bienvenida died on July 23rd.
So what about all the people that cremated? Like, what about them? Do they not?
That's gross.
Yeah. Is it like, oh, well, they deserve better? I mean, like, what are you saying? All right, we're going to keep going. We can't just get hung up on everything to this.
It's hard not to, though.
Bienvenida died on July 23rd, 1980. Her star sign is Aries.
My best friend is an Aries.
What's that matter?
Can I tell you something? There's nothing.
Are you the best friend?
No. Of all the things that you can say when you meet a person, sometimes you meet somebody and like you immediately know within like 5 minutes that they're into CrossFit or they're surfing or they really love like certain kind of coffee or they're into weed culture or whatever it is.
Astrology is the thing that you want no part of.
When I hear that, is like when that's like one of the first. Now look, if I've known you for a little while and you're like, oh, you're Cancer, huh? That's great. Which I'm not. Fuck you. When that's like one of the first things that comes out, I'm done. Again, like 3 months in, you're like, oh yeah, you're Taurus or whatever. You're like a Capricorn. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Fine. When you lead with that shit, I immediately know we can't be hanging out.
We can't.
And by the way, I say that knowing full well that there's probably people listening to this. They're gonna be like, "Oh, fuck that guy! Like, it's like a real science." Which, read up on it. Anyway,
I wonder what Bienvenida's life was like. Does she like chocolate cupcakes?
This is just
okay. That's no. She doesn't like chocolate cupcakes. She doesn't like anything.
Even if you were like, I wonder if she liked them. That's a preposterous
Even if you
moment.
believe in an afterlife, you're going to tell me that like your fucking Betty Crocker bullshit cupcake's going to be better than what she's getting, than the ambrosia that Jesus Christ is serving her in the fucking afterworlds? How dare you?
But she thought of that. She's like, I'm going to do this video and then I'm going to splice this cupcake.
Well, I mean, all the Tickens and the Talkins love their food videos.
Cupcakes? What killed her?
What killed her? The first thing I think anytime I see a grave is, what killed them? What if she killed herself?
From cleaning material?
Or just killed herself, period. What if she had diabetes from too much chocolate cupcake? Just saying. Keep on going.
Transformation is a lot of work. I might be...
Oh, maybe you shouldn't be doing it!
Yeah, no one asked you to do this.
Lot of work. I might be here all night, but it's so fun.
Ooh, a little
So fun.
Is it fun? Because you're talking about how it's work and you're eating I mean, I guess if you just like brought a fucking buffet, yeah, it's gonna be great. Like, did you pop open a bottle of champagne?
So fun.
Ooh, a little bug.
Thank you to everyone who supports and follows.
So she's done more of these.
Okay, I don't know.
She definitely has.
Here's the thing.
You don't do this once.
If we were actual professionals, we're not professionals. Maybe we would have done our maybe we would have done our due diligence on Bambi here and gone into her background, but I didn't do that because why would I?
You don't need to. She does this all the
already
time.
know one important thing. She's doing this to hawk her shit.
Yes.
Am I wrong?
She's doing this to preach her because she has a deal with the smiley sponge and she cooks cupcakes.
Now, I did read some of the comments, and it does sound like some people have verified that she does have some variety of pink goo that she markets for cleaning
Hence
shit.
the pink top.
And she is some kind of like a cleaning guru piece of shit. And I say piece of shit, and some of you boobs.
She deserves
some
it,
of you
though.
youth might think that's too aggressive. No. This is like really exploitative. And again, I say this as a person who thinks like Jesus is a fairy tale. But the thing is, like, just try to have some reverence for fucking places that people hold sacred. It doesn't mean you have to believe their shit. And by the way, I don't care about dead body beneath there. Like, whatever her name, what was her name?
Bienvenida.
I'm sure she was lovely, but maybe she was a real piece of shit. This video has no bearing on any of that. It's just like, how can I be exploitative and do it with a smile? So all you idiots out there will suck my slop.
But also, how many... Does she think there's a big market out there that's like, I need to know how to clean my tombstone?
Well, that's the other thing. Okay, so and we won't go through it again, but just listen to this music.
I'm at the graveyard at night.
It's very haunted house.
Cleaning this abandoned grave for free. I have so many questions in my head. What happened?
Like, what are you doing? What is the tone you're trying to set? Like, at least put a stupid ukulele and glockenspiel song in there. Like,
that would make it worse.
We are cleaning the fucking.
But would that make it worse or better?
But it doesn't matter. At least lean into your stupid bullshit. At least lean into what you're doing, because what you're doing sucks, and you know it. So just like lean into it and be like, I'm being super exploitative, but you know what? Stuff that's outside all the time gets real dirty, and it's a real good test for my stupid goop.
I have one more question.
Okay.
How many cuts did she make of this?
Oh, I bet this was like a 4-day edit. But also, here's the other question. Do you think... So at the end, and we're not going to play it, but like the end, there's this perfectly white grave with flowers and trees behind it. So apparently she planted trees. Now here's my real question. Do you think that final white sheen, because we see all these different stages of Smiley Sponge and she's rubbing like stuff
she didn't
off.
do it.
But do you think that like she actually got this to its white?
No, because she would have shown it.
Do you think that she knew that this graveyard was due for like maintenance? Maybe she's dating the fucking gravedigger or whatever.
There's too much. There's too much of a difference between the end product and the last time we see her cleaning.
Yeah, because like you could have easily done like a time lapse.
Yeah,
to like show us this.
Because if the product actually works, which is not the fucking issue here,
level of exploitation. She's like literally just piggybacking off the work of some fucking guy that works at a graveyard, which by the way has to be hard work. So you know what? Thumbs down, motherfucker. You're a trash person.
Is her real name Bambi?
No, she doesn't she look like a Bambi?
She does, but I have.
If that's reductive, you know. By the way, I say that I'm wearing a beanie, which I never wear. I say that
he doesn't,
realizing full well that I look like Tim Pool right now. So don't get me wrong. I don't want to judge a book by its cover. He's a Rogan satellite. Like, what all these women have? It's like, you just let a man beat you to death. I don't give a shit. I'm a fucking radio personality. Like, Jones ain't so bad. Blah, blah, blah. He's one of these fucking assholes.
Duly noted.
Tim Pool can drown in a pool for all I care. Hope you die without no hair, cause you wear that beanie every day.
There's like a greatest hits soundtrack coming out of this episode.
I don't know what I'm doing. What has this taught us about the media?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
That might have been the most insane
is it
clip
like
we've watched so far.
Isn't it the most like one of the most cynical things you can possibly see? These idiots will swallow my slop no matter what I show them.
It's bad. It's bad. But you know what?
Yeah, there's no way to end on a high note.
We're just normal men.
We're just normal men.
Castagainsttype@gmail.com. Please submit your questions. Please do that. Please submit your questions. And you don't have to do it via castagainsttype@gmail.com, spelled like it sounds.
DM
you can
us.
also do that via DM on one of the socials. What do those include, Mr. Frank?
Cast Against Type on Instagram and TikTokers.
And the ticking and talking, so you can do your dancing and your question submitting at the same time.
And your grave cleaning.
We can be found on Spotify. We can be found on Apple Pod.
YouTube. Amazon Music.
Yeah. And anywhere that supports an RSS feed, which you can easily grab from SoundCloud.
You can smash the like button if you want.
No, God.
Just smash it.
All right. Well, I think that'll do for now. If you like what you're fucking hearing, rate us, like and subscribe and all that.
Do it one more time.
We're just normal men.
Bye.
Bye.